why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and people who don't know you?
So I am an event planner and venue management staff person for a few different venues here in the DC area. And then, like I said, I do event planning for some private clients, a lot of times weddings. However, we have done a few corporate things as well. And then we also do photo shoot styling for a few companies for products and different clothings and things like that. So we are the prime example of always having something to do and running around, and you just kind of have to go with your first instinct on things because you don't always have a lot of time to redesign things or come up with new plans.
So event planning, how are you guys dealing with COVID?
It's definitely been a big pivot in life. So now when we create the floor plans, everything, of course, has to be 6 feet apart, and clients can't show up to the event and be like, oh, well, we actually want this high top over here closer to the bar because you can't put things closer together. So once things are in place, they have to stay in place. Wedding tables now have to be 6 people or less, ideally all from the same household or from people who've been quarantining together. So doing the guest list and the seating charts is a whole new ball game now. It takes a lot more time than it used to be because you would just put people with their friends or with like another couple who just needed 4 more people at their table or something along those lines. Now you have to color code everybody of who they've been hanging out with and who they've seen recently. And
Wow.
you have to now ask, instead of dietary restrictions, is somebody high risk in certain areas? Do they have to be separated a little further from other people? You have to now find like cute custom mask for the bride and groom to wear, and just a totally new level of creativity to still make it their dream day. Because a lot of couples, they don't want to wait a whole nother year to get married. They're ready to still get married and start their lives.
Wow.
Yes.
So the bride and groom have to wear masks?
So you're supposed to wear them the entire time. However, during the ceremony, it's usually just the bride and groom and then the officiant up there. So the officiant will wear his or her mask. Bride or groom will take theirs off during the ceremony because they kiss at the end of it. And then, especially now here in DC, actually, you have to keep your mask like around your chin. So when you take a bite of food, you put it right back up. You can't take it completely off to eat or drink anymore. You're supposed to put it right back on immediately. So it's definitely been a handful trying to get people to do that, especially you walk to the bar and the bartender gives you one drink and you go to take a sip of it, and then you have to put the mask on, and cocktail hour is not a thing anymore because you can't do tray passed hors d'oeuvres because nobody can be grabbing them. So if you do it, they have to be in individual containers for them to hand it to you. And then people are trying to take the mask off to take the bite while holding their drink. And
that's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot. How are you dealing with all that?
I'm doing good actually with it. I love a challenge, and this has definitely been a challenge.
Sounds it, yeah.
And every group handles it so differently, but overall, everybody's been very respectful and just overall appreciative of even still being able to have their wedding. We haven't really run into anybody who's like, well, we're still having our wedding and we're not wearing our mask. I feel like everybody's very understanding of what's going on right now, which is good.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff. So even like, what about drinking? Are they allowed to drink at weddings and whatever?
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's the same thing. You're supposed to take the mask off, take a sip, put the mask back on. Everybody, once they start eating or drinking, or they're with their quarantine table, basically, they just take the mask off and they eat and drink, which is fine. I mean, it's like a restaurant. People are doing it there too. Like I said, you're supposed to put it right back on, but there's just not even enough staff to stand next to every single person and be like, put that back on. You just took a bite. Put that back on. You just took a sip.
Have you felt like, or have you seen, I guess, anyone just say, I'm not doing this?
Luckily, I have not. I was out to dinner one night, actually, and I saw somebody say that they can't wear a mask because it interferes with what they're going for. And I was like, wait, I was like, I need to hear this conversation. So, of course, I like scooted my chair over a little bit. And this woman said that she couldn't wear her mask because her makeup, it would smudge it too much. And she's going to a very important dinner. And the host, this poor maybe 16-year-old girl, is like, well, unfortunately, then I can't allow you to sit and eat. And the woman was like, are you saying that I can't sit here just because I won't wear a stupid mask? And got so defensive. And I was sitting there, I was like, I feel so bad for this girl. But luckily, I have not personally had to jump in any of those situations. But there are people who will just not wear one.
That's an interesting point because one part of me wants to say this lady's absolutely ridiculous, and I want to judge her right away. Another part of me is thinking, all right, well, we've been quarantined for quite some time.
Yes.
And I don't know this lady's life. I don't know anything about her. I
don't know what the important dinner is
at all. And did you happen to notice? I mean, this is almost getting freaky, like with stalking, but did you happen to notice if she was there with a husband, a wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or whatever?
She was there with a man. I'm assuming it was her husband because they both had rings on, but you never know nowadays.
Right.
So assuming it's her husband and a little 3-year-old.
See, that's what's interesting is that even as you say that, now in my head, I start to immediately think, you have a 3-year-old. And let's just assume, and this is the big assumption here, let's assume that you're out with dinner with your husband and your 3-year-old because you can't find a sitter. And you've been quarantined forever. And 3 years old, you may have not, there's no maybe pre-K and there's no school to worry about, but daycare. And every single day you've been working from home, you've been doing everything from home, and you're now at this restaurant and it could be your big night out. And you've been masking every time you go to the grocery store, you've been wearing a mask everywhere you go, and you're at this dinner, you want to look good, you want to feel good, and you don't want to wear the mask. How do you negotiate the health risk versus, well, I guess I don't want to make a jump or be redundant in saying mental health or whatever, but how do you negotiate between other people and yourself, your own wants and needs versus someone else's?
It's, I don't know. Yeah. It's so hard too, because I'm sure even just the mental state of not wearing your pajamas or leggings and a t-shirt all day and finally getting dressed up and as a girl, putting on your makeup, taking your time doing this.
It's a ritual.
And you feel so much better about yourself. It's a whole look good, feel good mentality. So
No, I don't know. I don't know how you work that out. It's I remember at the beginning of COVID, the one question that me and some of my friends were asking were lives versus livelihood. And this was, I think this might've been before everything started completely shutting down. Before the quarantine, we were just talking about, lives versus livelihood. And then all these businesses, all these bars, all these people that we care dearly about, from your neighborhood restaurant that you go to all the time to whatever bar, whatever it is that you do. The implications were huge.
Oh, yeah. And especially you and I have so many close friends and family who even work in the service industry that you see how it's affecting their livelihood and you see all these things. But then you also will see your random neighbor's best friend who lost their dad to COVID. And it's my standpoint on it is you can always make more money. You can't bring somebody back.
Yeah.
But there are people who have lost so much money that they may never fully financially recover from this. So,
yep. And that's the conversation. And that's the one thing that I'm still, even now, as people are going into phase 2, phase 3, phase whatever, and we're getting another spike and different states are handling it differently. And now it seems like it's become highly politicized, and I'm not going to go down that road yet. However, you as an event planner, when COVID first started, what did that look like?
It was crazy. We were reaching out to our vendor partners. We were reaching out to our clients to reschedule things. And now it's hard because financially, everything that we were supposed to do and make in 2020, ourselves, vendors, everybody, has now been pushed to 2021. So I'm totally wrong about this. Say there's 25 good Saturdays that everybody wants for a wedding in 2020. We book all 25 of those. Now there's 22 good weekends that everybody wants in 2021 for weddings. Those are now already booked from these clients in 2020, rescheduling for 2021. So that payment that you were getting in 2020 has now been stretched for a whole nother year.
Wow.
So, and there's now clients who were supposed to get married in 2021, being we'll start planning our wedding once COVID dies down, that are now frantic saying, do you please tell me you have a Sunday left even? Like, it doesn't even need to be a Saturday. We just want to get married on a weekend.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And do you guys have, I don't know, do you follow DC? I know DC is not a state yet, maybe, but do you follow the rules of DC or is it in-house?
So it's mostly the rules of DC. However, since we are a private venue and especially these events, they are 99% just family. It has been a little more relaxed, which has been great. Especially for ourselves and our staff members to really have to worry mostly about ourselves and our staff. Whereas the client and the couple and their family, we do ask that obviously you don't come if you've had a cough or a fever or anything like that. We're doing contact tracing. Like I said, we put the table 6 feet apart. So we're doing on our end everything we can do. But I'm not qualified to stand down there and take everybody's temperature.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, my temperature runs low, so I'm always at like 96. So if I'm up to like 99, that's considered like a fever for me. But somebody else who's like always 98, if they're at 99, that's not a fever. So I don't know where to. I'm sure there's articles that say like draw the line here and things, but
you're not the expert.
No, and I'm not a medical person. I can't. If somebody's like, well, I don't want you to take my temperature, I can't be like, well, I'm a professional. This is what I'm here for.
Right. But let me ask you this: how many weddings did you? So I know you might not be able to give me a hard line date, but when did you guys close down everything?
March 15th.
Oh, wow. So you got a date.
Yeah. March 15th is when we closed everything down because I remember it was my brother's birthday. It's March 17th. And I did not get around to texting him till like almost 11 o'clock at night because I was on the phone all day.
Just contacting clients?
Yeah. And clients calling us, freaking out. I mean, we had clients contacting us in March who weren't scheduled to get married till October.
Wow.
Just jumping the gun, being like, this isn't going to be a thing. Like, we can't get married this year, like all this stuff. And at that point, we were like, oh, no. We're only rescheduling like April, May, and June clients right now. Like, we'll get to you guys if need be. And now.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
So from March 15th till when were you when were you able to even, I remember you mentioned something about micro weddings and maybe explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So for micro weddings, we have offered a special package at one of the venues I manage, which is mostly an outdoor venue, which has been ideal for this, all the fresh air. We are doing small micro wedding packages, max of 20 guests, including the bride and groom. So 18 guests, which is great because it does give plenty of room for if they come from a larger family, there's plenty of room to get everybody from their family there, or the close family and friends. So that way they can still get married and have a nice backdrop and be in a nice space that's not their little tiny apartment in DC and have those nice photos that they want. And then they can do their larger reception next year. So these micro weddings, you're only on site for 2 hours. So it's, you do your ceremony, you can do your first dance, you do a cake cutting, little champagne toast, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a nice backup option for a lot of couples who, again, didn't want to wait to get married, but they can wait to throw the big party with the 150, 200 people they originally had planned.
You know, one thing that I'm noticing, you speak with a lot of passion about this. Like you care about this.
Oh, yeah. I love this. I am so fortunate to love what I do as much as I do. Because for those of you who don't know, I'm young. I'm 24. There's a lot of 24-year-olds who are just working some 9-to-5 job, just trying to make enough money to pay their own rent and trying to get to be in a job where they're happy.
Right. What got you here? Like, why event planning?
So, funny story. I originally came to DC because I wanted to major in politics. And I wanted to do some sort of event planning, campaign, a marketing type of situation with politics. But, I was watching Scandal. I was watching all those shows. I was really into it. I'm going to be the next political ideal person for these things. No, I did one internship in the Hill. And I was like, yeah, you know what? This really is not for me. I loved planning the parties, loved going to the kickoffs, loved all this stuff. So I was like, let me see what I can do more in the just events field without the political side of things.
So it started in political events?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Actually, for Senator McCain. He was great to work with. I could not say enough good things about him. Just politics wasn't my thing. was not my forte. So did a lot of events for him. Like I said, loved it. Then from there, I switched my major. I did media communications from there on out. Thought maybe I would dabble in marketing a little bit. Wasn't sure. I love graphic designs, maybe something in that field. And then I found this company, Fathom Creative, and they are a digital marketing company here in DC, but they actually in their office have a venue, Fathom Gallery. And that's how I found the gallery. And I started interning there my senior year and then just turned into a full-time job after graduation. I've been there for almost 3 years now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like one of those things where like life took over.
Exactly. Like everything works out the way it's supposed to in life. And I'm a firm believer in that. And this is just another example of it just worked out. I just let it do its thing, followed my instincts, and now I'm happy as can be.
And you've been there for how many? How long?
Almost 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it started as an internship, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Started interning there my senior year in October, and then was there all through that. Graduated. They offered me a full-time job. Didn't even think twice about it. Took it. Been there ever since. And the person who used to do their marketing, she actually is the one who does wedding planning for her own clients, as well as the photo shoot styling. So that's how I met her. And I've been working with her on the side ever since as well. And it's nice because it's just the three of us. So the three of us know each other. We're able to talk, able to work out schedules, and it works out very well. Got very, very, very lucky.
That's awesome. That's a good story. What was it about event planning, though, that clicked? Like, what about it?
I really liked the connection that you make with the clients. Like, I love venue managing, and a lot of times people, when their reviews will say like, Kristen was so nice. She like actually really took an interest in our event and things like that. So a lot of venue managers will just show up, unlock the space, and then come back at the end of the night and lock it. Whereas I'm always up there with like the catering team, making sure things are put where they're supposed to be and things like that, because I really do. I'm a people person, love talking to people. I love forming that connection and then seeing something come to life, and also seeing that like, wow, this is their wedding day. Like, this is a day they will never forget. And like the fact that you're like even a little part of that, it's just amazing.
That's awesome. But so the one thing that's made you stand out, and I know that this is all starting to sound like a shameless plug. No. I get that. But the one thing that's made you stand out, and in your opinion, as a professional and in this field, is taking an interest in a client. Yeah.
Taking an interest in them. And like one of my clients, like she loves waffles. Like that's one of her favorite things. So when we reached out to the caterer, I added something in there. And sure enough, we got the proposal from them, and it had like a late night waffle dessert bar. And she's like, oh my gosh, wait, this is so amazing. I wouldn't have even thought of this. So it's like finding those little things that really make the client's day their day.
It's interesting. All right, so let's pretend for a second I'm one of your clients. Mm-hmm. I know this is like I'm going kind of deep about something that maybe not a lot of people might find interesting, but again, there's just a foundational thing that is really interesting to me, is the concept that in order for you to do your job at the bare minimum, you have to open up the space. Yeah. And basically have paperwork signed about we want to eat this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. But what may set you apart is taking an interest in that human being. What does that look like? So if I'm your client, what kind of questions are you asking me? And let's role play, if you will.
So the first thing we ask any client, and this is just our team standard, is that we say, so before I jump in and tell you about the space, let me hear what you have in mind for your wedding. What are you envisioning? What have you maybe even already planned? And then they'll jump in and they'll be like, well, so I want to do a big wedding with lots of music and lots of dancing, and I want it more relaxed. So I don't want a ton of table and chairs. I don't think I want a fully seated dinner. So at that point, you're already thinking like, okay, this is a fun couple. This is a couple that is there for the party. They're not there to have like the best gourmet meal they've ever had in their entire life. Maybe they'll want to do like a slider bar or like an interactive station or something like that. Or you have the couple who's like, so we really want a full sit down dinner. We're only doing 20 guests. And pre-COVID times, that would be a tiny wedding.
Right.
Now that's a normal wedding.
Right.
But we're doing 20 guests. We want to do a nice 4-course meal. For our honeymoon, we're actually going to this country to do this tasting and things like that. So you kind of find out that, okay, this is the couple that is going to want maybe like a nice little band playing in the background music, not like a full DJ party bumping like type of setup. So really, they tell you a lot about themselves in that first call without even actually saying like, we're foodies, we're party people,
So it's your job. You have to pay really close attention to, from that first, like we found you on a random website somewhere. I'm paying attention to everything you're saying, and more importantly, everything you're not saying, like in the sense of this, when they say like, oh yeah, well, we got together, like you may ask them a generic question, like tell me your story. Right.
Yeah.
And then they just go into detail about when they met. And somehow you just have to pay attention to all those little details.
Yeah. And you have to find the one thing that like sticks, like going back to the girl who loves waffles. I didn't even realize it until one day she followed me on Instagram and I followed her back. And she had like a story highlight about like the best waffles she's had. And like, that's like, you find out so much by like kind of creepy, but like social media stalking them or like just looking through their social media.
That's interesting. Yeah. Is that something you guys utilize a lot? By you guys, yeah. I mean like just event planners in general even?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's actually how a lot of event planners and even the venue, we get a lot of people coming in saying like, oh my gosh, we saw you guys on Instagram. We saw somebody post it and tagged you guys in this. And we wanted to come check it out. We think this is perfect. I love your photos. They're so pretty. Can you make my wedding look like this picture? And
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's why I'm on my phone constantly. And, you know, my boyfriend gets annoyed sometimes when I'm just sitting down on Instagram and I always tell him it's for work.
Nice.
I'm working right now. Leave me alone.
You're collecting ideas. This is the creative process.
Yes.
It's the creative process. So in paying attention to the little details and paying attention to all that, as well as using those social media resources, it sounds like that's a crap ton of work. Like when's your off switch?
I don't have an off switch. I will work from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. But the fact that I love it so much, it doesn't feel like work. Like this past weekend, I had a wedding Friday morning, then drove to New York Friday night for a rehearsal dinner, then had a wedding all day Sunday, was up by 7 in the morning, got back to my hotel close to 2 o'clock in the morning, and then woke up at 6 a.m. to drive back to DC at 7 a.m. to do another wedding at Fathom Gallery, my venue, Sunday night. And yeah, I was tired, but like the minute we would start doing something for an event, like not tired anymore. I got this. This is fun. I can do this. Always had a smile on my face, talking with the clients, like met great people the entire time, like had a great time. And then I got home Sunday night. I was like asleep by like 8:30.
I can't even imagine. So do you party with these people?
No. So we have a few guests every once in a while who are like, come on.
I did notice the shrug.
Yeah.
I noticed that little look of like, well,
every once in a while. But no, there's always like a groomsman or somebody who's like, come on, just grab a drink from the bar, grab a drink. And little does everybody know, secret, we're friends with the caterers.
Right.
Like when we ask for a water, sometimes they'll put a little extra than just water in it. Like
trade secrets revealed.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
We are very well taken care of, but it is something that once you go through your timeline, like everything's strict. Like you cut your cake at 8:15 on the dot. Your first dance is at 7:55. Like things are planned down to the minute. Once everybody's on the dance floor, dancing, having a good time, and my next thing to do is pack up my belongings, then I'll have like a glass of wine or something at the event. But I'll do it in the back room where nobody can see me, and it's not like oh my God, she's just sitting there drinking, hanging out. Right. Like,
yeah, it's not about necessarily. You said something. I'm going to switch topic for a minute. Everything has to be planned out to the minute like that?
Oh, yeah.
How does that not spill over into your day-to-day? Or does it?
It 100% does.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So spontaneity is not your best friend.
No, not at all. And, my boyfriend, he's always running. He'll say he'll be there at 4. He doesn't show up till 6:30. I don't handle it well.
Yeah, that's definitely a little bit of a trigger, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, time management, big deal for you.
And I think, honestly, I swam in college and I swam all through elementary school, middle school, high school. And in high school, we used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go to practice from 5 to 7, go to school from 8 to 3, go to practice again from 4 to 7, go home, do my homework for about 2 or 3 hours, go to sleep, wake up, do it all again. Like you find every spare minute in your high school day to like get ahead on homework or get ahead on studying. So that way you don't have to stay up later and you won't be more tired the next day.
Wow.
So I think that has definitely trained me to like, oh, while I'm sitting at this red light real quick, I just need to go and do this real quick. Okay, done. Put that down, drive to where I need to be. Already done what I needed to do.
Wow. Everything's got to be just right there.
Oh, yeah.
Damn. So has it affected your personal life?
I like to not think so.
Nice.
But I do. I mean, I work every weekend. So that's definitely affected being able to go out with friends and things like that. But also my friends are amazing and very understanding. And I think the fact that I love what I'm doing so much is that people aren't like being like, well, you need to just quit your job and do something different. They're like, okay, like you're really liking this. Like we'll see you Sunday morning. You don't have anything. Let's go to brunch. So.
No, I think the theme that keeps coming back for me is the fact that you're able to negotiate between work. You keep saying you have a boyfriend, so you have your personal life, you have your professional life. However, the common theme seems to be you're just a people person. It's like that's the one thing that I'm just like it's radiating out of you is that talking to people, dealing with people, and it doesn't matter how. Maybe for me, it may sound. I don't want to say it's not boring. That's not the right word. I can't think of it right now, but it just sounds almost monotonous, I guess, in the sense of how many weddings could you possibly want to be around?
And that I've definitely gone to that point before, especially when I started in this field. I was the girl who I was like, I'm going to have a huge wedding, like 300 people. I'm going to wear a huge white dress. I'm at the point now where I'm like, listen, Italy sounds great. My family, his family, me and him, that's all we need. Eat some good food. I'll wear a nice dress, but like something so just like different than what my original idea was.
I figured you were going to say courthouse, noon.
I've thought about that too.
Drinks at 12:30.
like a Tuesday, like lunch break type thing.
No, that sounds, and outside of weddings, like are weddings the number one event that you're really exposed to?
Yeah. So at the venue, we do a few different ones. We do baby showers, we do bridal parties, we do birthday parties, corporate meetings, things like that. But weddings honestly bring in at least 80% of our revenue. So those are really the ones that we focus in on.
Wow. And what's the number 2? If weddings is number 1, what would be number 2?
Number 2, I would say would actually be baby showers. Baby showers are another one that people have now. Baby showers are a huge thing. They used to be like 10, 15 people at your house hanging out. And maybe it's because we're in DC and everybody lives in like their 300 square foot shoebox apartment that they can't have 10 or 15 people over. Right. So they rent out a venue and then they're like, well, we want to fill it with people. So it's a bigger deal. But yeah, that's definitely number 2. And we have had a lot of people who have been like, oh, my best friend got married here. We saw you guys also do baby showers. We're expecting our first child. Can we do our baby shower here?
And your biggest venue, how many people does it hold?
120 max. So it's not huge. Definitely not.
It's not
tiny.
like the hotel. It's not the hotel.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So weddings, you mentioned swimming and how you got here. Now, given the current mood of everything, and has work went up, down, or is completely unchanged?
So I would say amount wise, it has not changed. Event type wise, it has changed drastically.
Yeah.
Instead of doing one wedding a weekend for 100 to 120 guests, having a full catering team there, having like a 3-hour setup, an hour for breakdown, and people on site for 6 hours. It's now 2 weddings a weekend, which is great. But instead of the original X figure that we would have gotten, we're now getting a tenth of that for them to come in with their 10 close family members and 2 of their best friends to do a 10-minute ceremony and take some photos and then leave.
Are you still able to do, and I don't mean to cut you off, but are you still able to do like that part where you're getting to know the client? Are you able to accommodate that at all, given the current mood of things?
So we do get to know them very well when they first come to tour the space. So instead of doing that initial call, even now, we just go straight to inviting them in to see the space. And that's a good way to get to know them because you have couples who come in with just like a look of relief on their face. Like, this is the 4th time we've tried to plan our wedding. Things keep changing. Our first venue was too big. Our caterer needs to drop off this amount of things and just all this stuff. So you can see that it's one couple who just really, really wants to get married. And then we've also had the couples who are like, oh yeah, we wanted to do a courthouse wedding, but we saw that everybody's doing all these promotions to do these cheaper, nicer weddings. So we got engaged 2 weeks ago. We thought we would just do this now to kind of get in while we can type thing. So you still get a sense of people, but
has it impacted like your passion for it? You think, like in your opinion, obviously.
In my opinion, it's definitely changed what's made it important or what's my favorite aspects have been. My favorite aspect used to be the planning part. I love being creative. I love putting together the mood boards for the clients. I feel like that's when I get to know them the best as well. But now my favorite part is just when they finally both show up and like he's in his tux, she's in his dress, and it's like that look of like, wow, we're finally able to get married.
Yeah, right. It's a big
like,
deal.
We've been trying to do this forever.
Yeah.
So it's definitely different, but still similar.
Do you think that you'd ever, like in the future, those social skills that you're taking? And actually, speaking of which, let me ask you kind of a tough question.
I'm ready.
Do you think, what if someone was to tell you, she's full of crap. She doesn't actually care about anything. This is all financially motivated. And that's what event planners, that's what it is. It's purely financial. It has nothing to do with my likes or dislikes. She doesn't care about me. None of this is as personable as the way that you've presented, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say to that?
Well, I would probably tell them, I understand your opinion. I respect it. I don't agree with it. And you can look at these reviews from these clients who have said differently. I would love the opportunity to prove you wrong, to show you that I do care. However, your perception is what you believe, and that's your reality, and that's your thing. But I think you're wrong.
I think they'd be wrong too. I just think that it's become so ingrained from what I'm seeing, at least from my perspective, that people are looking towards everything as being, what's your ulterior motive?
Yes.
You have, like, why are you doing this? Why are you remembering that I like waffles? Like, is your life, and again, I'm not trying to be rude, but is your life that boring that you're sitting at home with your boyfriend and you're on Instagram and you're stalking my Instagram to find out that I like waffles? What's that about?
Yeah. And I feel like there's definitely people who could feel that way, or people even be like, well, you work all weekend, you work all week. There's no way you have a social life. There's no way you actually have friends outside of this. There's like almost like you're a loser. That's why you work so much, which has definitely been something people have assumed. But I'm comfortable with myself and so confident in who I am and what I have going on in my life that, okay, you think that, great. Like, then I'm now thinking like you have nothing better to do than sit there and think about what's going on in my life. So
yeah. No, it's fascinating because I think in order for you to actually be successful in your field, from what I'm understanding from it at least, is that you actually have to give a crap. You really have to, pay attention to the littlest details while at the same time making sure that all the most important, whether it's legal, whether it's catering, whether it's whatever, the venue and whatever else that you have to do, you have to have that covered. But at the same time, be able to take the time to listen to those little subliminal messages that sometimes people are saying without actually even knowing that they're saying it.
yeah, it's a lot of reading between the lines.
So if for people that might be interested in event planning, for people that are in basically the service industry, because I would definitely put that under the service industry because you are providing a service, right?
Absolutely.
And I guess there is nothing that's not in the service industry. But what is your key to success?
You have to be willing to work hard. There's no replacement for having a good work ethic. Event planning, yes, we wear the nice dresses and the heels and things like that at the event. But what you don't see is us in our leggings and t-shirts covered in sweat 15 minutes before everybody shows up, moving tables on our own and setting up the chairs and redoing certain things and just actually getting like to the down and dirty of it. Like you're not just the person who sits there and tells people what to do.
So it is actually, you're also behind the scenes when the chairs are set up a certain way, when people are looking for, what's that thing they get married under called? It looks like an arch.
Oh, the arbor.
Yeah. You're setting all that stuff up.
Yeah. Well, so the florist will usually set up the arbor and things like that, but she needs a extra set of hands. You're jumping in, you're holding things, you're screwing things together. You're standing in the back saying, okay, you got to move it to the left a little bit. Let me jump in, pull it to the left. All right. Yeah. No, that's good. Let's figure out the florals. We want to put them all on this side. This needs an extra rose over here. And you really got to know your stuff and be willing to jump in and break a nail.
Right.
For lack of a better term.
So before we end, let me ask you a question. Why are you choosing to help me with this podcast? Because this is the first episode. It's been very smooth at times, very rough at times. It's been taking a lot of effort not to look at the different monitors and screens as we're both learning how to use this. And why did you choose to jump onto this?
I chose to jump onto this because it's a project that I really believe in. I believe in the ability to see people's lives from their point of view. And I think a lot of it could be the environment I grew up in. Like I mentioned, I grew up in Florida with a lot of people who are lily white like I am and just a totally different environment than DC. And then I moved up here and I've learned so much information about how different people live, how everybody acts, how everybody's grown up in different environments. And then when I go home and we're sitting around the dinner table talking about things, it's like certain people don't understand that there's different ways of life. So just having a platform like this where you can send it to a lot of people and more people can hear it and live almost vicariously through this or learn vicariously through this, that it's so important and so needed. And especially now that kids are at home 24/7, just learning from their parents or just learning from their strict neighborhood community and not even getting out to schools to meet different people or see different things, that this is something that's really needed right now.
Let me ask you this actually. So maybe we're not going to end quite yet. So you mentioned growing up white and moving to DC. Talk a little bit about your experiences regarding race and regarding culture and what you're exposed to in Florida, because I'm not from Florida. And then we'll start there.
Yeah. So in Florida, I grew up in a very nice area. I went to an all-girls private Catholic high school. There were 99 girls in my graduating class. 3 of them were Black.
Wow.
2 of the girls who were Black were there on scholarship. Like it was very different than coming to DC. And I went to a university over in Northeast DC. So Northeast DC is predominantly Black. And it was a totally different outlook on things.
That's culture shock, yeah.
Yeah. But I've always been able to adapt to changing scenarios. And I've always been a very outgoing people person. So I've never felt that like, oh my God, I need to walk 10 feet away from you because of X, Y, or Z. But there are a lot of girls that I went to school with who felt that way and would not go to certain areas of town because of the people who lived there and feel certain ways. There's a girl that I went to school with who her dad told her that we could not live together because my boyfriend was Black.
Ouch.
Yeah. Her and I are still great friends. Her and my boyfriend are great friends. Her dad, that's not something he believes.
What's it like for you to go back to Florida and whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's whomever, and discussing with them those realities?
That's my family is amazing. There's 4 kids and then my parents. The 6 of us are best friends. We talk all day, every day in a group chat. We know everything about each other. I am so blessed in that aspect to be so close to my family. However, we do have aunts and uncles who aren't as open to have certain conversations. And there have been numerous times during, Christmas and Thanksgiving, you have your 12 people around the table, everybody's talking at once. Somebody brings up something political and everything goes down the drain. Everybody's screaming at each other, arguing. And there are certain people who just don't want to hear a different opinion. But something I've learned is being able to break things down to a simple humanitarian standpoint, like with everything going on right now with the Black Lives Matter, like nobody deserves to die by being shot by a cop for just walking away in the most recent circumstances. That's just not a thing. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're Asian. I don't care if you're purple or you're pink. Like nobody deserves that, bottom line. And then being able to agree on that bottom line and then grow from that is what will get people to open their minds.
Well, I think you're touching on a lot of really good stuff, but how do you explain to someone? All right, so let's use you for an example. In Florida, how many interactions did you ever have with police in general?
I got pulled over twice for speeding. Didn't get a ticket either time. Asked for my license registration, gave it to them, and they're like, "Okay, just be a little more careful."
What was if I don't know how long I don't know how long ago this was, but what was that interaction like?
It was, they walked up. I was driving a little BMW at the time, knocked on the window, literally rolled down the window, and they laughed like, "Hi, sweetie. Like, you just wanted to let you know you're going a little fast. Like, you may want to slow down." And I was like, "Okay, like, I'm so sorry." And they're like, "Okay, let me check your license registration." And you give it to them and they're like, "Okay, yeah, no, your registration's just usually right there in your glove box." Like just like super sweet, almost condescendingly sweet, but like walking you through the process and okay, like everything came back clean, like you're good to go. But remember, like drive a little slower next time. Like we don't want you to get in an accident. Like, and you're like, oh, okay, like I kind of know. I know I was speeding. I was going 90 and a 30. Like I know I'm going too fast here.
Did they assume you didn't know how to live?
Like it must have been like they saw like a little 17-year-old girl driving. They have to be like, "Oh, she's in daddy's car. Like she's so cute." Like,
right. So what I find interesting about that story is my story would be a lot different.
Oh yeah.
So I was traveling to visit my folks back home, and I did get pulled over for speeding, except for it got conditioned to me very early in life by the culture that I grew up in. And I'm not talking about where I'm from, but just where I lived in St. Louis at the time that I lived in St. Louis. When you get pulled over, the first rule is if it's daytime, your hands they got to go up. And if it's nighttime, you turn on all the lights in your car and put your hands right on the ceiling. That way the cop can see both your hands. Same thing with any other passenger in the car. And then when the cop goes to your window, before you do anything, like the second you get pulled over, you roll down the window, hands are up. And sometimes if you're riding deep, if you have several people in your car, I've went as far as turning the car off and putting the keys on the dashboard where the cop can easily grab them. I'm not going to go through every single process, but before I move in the car, if it's license, registration, and everything, I have to say, like, I have to reach over there. It's right over there. The car's unlocked. You could grab it if you want. What I find interesting is our experiences are vastly different. And some of the things that I've heard from police regarding my first and last name, and you should change your last name, and you're in America now, and blah, 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 blah. It's quite disturbing. So going back to what you initially said, that common ground is great. And I agree that that common ground really needs to exist. But how do you tell someone who's had those experiences only with police that they're not really all that good? Or I'm not saying every cop is bad. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying is it's very difficult to look at a system from my perspective versus your perspective. And then if both of us are sitting at the table and we're talking about these things, and then I was to say to you, well, I understand that there is no reason why you'd ever want to defund the police. I understand that there's no reason why you'd ever want more transparency in the police, because at the end of the day, what wrong did they do? They've never done wrong. You've heard stories, but you're like, oh, that's just one incident, or not just another incident, or like it seems to be happening a lot. But wait a minute, what did George Floyd do? Like, was he a criminal? And the list and names goes deep.
Yeah.
But it's much easier for me to have my beliefs reaffirmed when you tell me George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Jacob. I'm not going to try it because I forgot his last name. Rest his soul.
Blake.
Jacob Blake. What did they do? Were they criminals? What's their record like? It's much easier for me to, if you tell me that they did have a record, they've made a mistake in their life, then I could say, well, they were probably acting wrong in that moment. And I get to still maintain my belief system that I've held so dear, that all cops treat me beautifully. And I'm that 17-year-old girl in the BMW.
Well, so my mom and I were talking about it, and she said, this was regarding George Floyd. She said, well, the autopsy report came back, and she's always had the same encounters with police that I've had. And she's like, the autopsy report came back. They found cocaine in his system and fentanyl and all these drugs and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so he did drugs. You should not do drugs. I'm not promoting doing drugs by any stance. However, if somebody did drugs and then for whatever reason, somebody felt like they needed to kneel on their neck, that is not the way they should have died. If the drugs killed them and they did the drugs, then they died from a drug overdose. And that's still sad and heartbreaking. However, that's not what killed him.
Not at all. And it was not drug related whatsoever.
No.
That's the thing, is that, and that's where the narrative, it's something that I think a lot of people are aware of. They're noticing now. It's a lot more visible. But if you go back to the 50s, to the 60s, and listen to people like James Baldwin, what's so irritating is that what they said back then still applies today.
Yeah.
It's a bit ridiculous that I'm not going to put a percentage on this because I'll be dead wrong every time. But a high percentage of people learned about what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma from the Watchmen.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go down that. Well, what does it say about the education system? What does it say about Black History Month, where we've learned time and time again about Martin Luther King, about Rosa Parks. We've learned about Malcolm X. We've learned about these big names. However, we never actually went into detail. And I'm speaking from a very objective point of view as a person who immigrated to this country and went through and had to learn American history. They never really went into detail about why did Martin Luther King have to give a speech? Why did Rosa Parks have to sit in the back of the bus? And it was always interesting to say that Malcolm X was militant, but he was always described as Martin Luther King's opposite, with always these negative undertones. Mm-hmm. And I remember that clearly in my education. And I always thought to myself, well, I guess Malcolm X was a bad guy and we're supposed to be like Martin Luther King. Rosa Parks took the bus. I have no idea what's happening, because you don't really learn anything about civil rights. You don't really learn anything about Jim Crow. And you definitely don't learn anything about the Civil War.
Yeah, like I vividly remember learning about the 3/5 voting, like that terminology, because it was like the vocabulary that you need to learn. It took me till like 10 years later to really understand like what that actually meant. I could recite for you what the definition was from the textbook, but to really understand the impact that something like that has on a group of people in a community and just in life, it takes more learning than what I think people are willing to put in at this point, or maybe not at this point, but back then.
So let me ask you this, and I'm sure you've heard this term a million times. What do you think of white privilege?
I think being able to even have to think about if you have white privilege is white privilege.
Explain that.
Like if I have to sit here and be like, well, I don't know if I have white privilege because like I grew up in a bad neighborhood per se or something like that. Like the fact that you even have to think that shows that you have it. I know tons of people who are like, well, I don't have white privilege because my husband is Black, so my kid's half Black, half white. It's like, no, you yourself, you still have it. You have the ability to, when you get pulled over, not put your hand straight up in the air. You have the ability to go for a run in a black hoodie and black leggings and not have to worry about things. You have the ability to live your life the way you want to without having to think 10 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I think the one piece where, again, to go back to the whole water bottle thing, the one thing that I struggle with is the amount of people that want to negate the concept of white privilege and white fragility at the same time. When I think of white privilege, it's, I think, obvious. You don't even have to, I mean, you could definitely, if you want to come at it from an educational standpoint, look at history.
Yeah.
Look at everything from the beginning to where you are now. And here's white privilege. White fragility is being able to say white privilege is not a thing. Because I think a lot of people hear that term white privilege. And I'm not saying that this is right or wrong, by the way. I'm just saying this is another perspective to it, is immediately negate the concept of white and immediately negate that we're having a conversation about race, culture, ethnicity, or whatever, right? And immediately jump on the privilege part. A lot of people I have found in a lot of long discussions regarding what's happening around the U.S. right now is that the term privilege seems to make them feel like you're somehow taking away part of the challenges that they have faced in their own life. And you might have grown up in Florida. You might have went to a private school and been able to drive a BMW, but that's not to say that you haven't had problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you've had challenges.
Or to say that I've just been given everything. I've never had to work for anything.
No one, and that's, I think, that's the misconception, that no one's saying that.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's saying that you never had to work a day in your life. I think the part that Black people and minorities in this country are trying to say, specifically Black people, is if you're putting in 50%, or if you're 100, or I'm sorry, all right, for every 5 hours of work you're putting in, I have to put in 15.
Yeah.
And we're still going to make the same amount of money. Now, I'm not saying that that's actually true regarding money and pay or whatever. I'm just saying I have to work super hard because we don't get to start the race at the same starting point. And that piece, I think, is the focus of the white privilege part. It's not about, no one's saying that Kristen has not worked her ass off in life. Yes, you have. You have made it from Florida. You were in DC. You are an event planner, a successful one at that. But it doesn't mean that you've not had challenges along the way, where I feel a lot of people are using the whole concept of privilege as a very personal defense mechanism. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely. And I agree 100%. I think the minute they almost feel like you're accusing them of taking the easy way to do certain things. So then they have to be like, well, I have to do this and this and this, and my life is hard. And just because their life is hard, why does everybody care if their life is hard? My life is hard too. And it's all of a sudden a defensive thing where all of a sudden you accuse somebody of being privileged, where now they're not open to listening.
Right. And that's the thing, is I think this is the tough part, is you can't ask someone that's been having knees stepped and knelt on their necks for the history of this country to now become empathic towards how their oppressor, perceived oppressor, the real oppressor, and the system that is choking them out. Now we have to be empathic and kind towards how we talk and discuss to that system. It's such an interesting place, and it's an observation. It's an idea. It's definitely, I don't want to say it's reality. I'm not making any political statements about it. It's interesting, because is it fair to ask a Black man to change his language just to make sure he doesn't insult the white person? Or does the white person have to step up to the plate and do some actual soul searching?
That's the thing. I think the minute any word that somewhat offends somebody is used, nobody wants to look within themselves anymore. They're now not open to learning things. They're more focused on what they're going to say next to defend themselves.
Yeah, I think that metaphorical mirror,
Yeah.
people have completely, I don't think a lot of people know where that mirror is in their house anymore.
Mm-mm.
Like if your house was, or if your life was a house, wherever that mirror is in there, I don't know if people have access to it anymore. I mean, I'll say this 50-50, right? 50% of people know exactly where the mirror is and 50 don't. I feel like that's the safest guess because I don't know everyone. But from my experiences, I find that looking inwards and being able to actually say, so think about that concept of, I'm sure you've heard this before, when white woman on an elevator, black man jumps on, she might hold her purse a little closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or move towards the door, away from the door in a corner, opposite, protect her space for, I'm not going to get into a lot of the obvious reasons, but for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
Versus if the elevator door open, same white woman, and a white man comes on, regardless of how either one are dressed. If they're just the same, just different reactions. What I find fascinating is I'd love to sit down with that woman and just ask her, when you look in the mirror, do you even understand what you're doing? Do you see the process? Do you see what's happening in front of you or no? What would you, as a white woman, as a person who comes from privilege, how do you react to that? Like, what do you say to people when they ask you, like, how do you negotiate the privilege and what are you doing to stand up for the minority?
That's a loaded question.
That's a huge loaded question.
So just piece by piece. So to the woman on the elevator, I think at that point you have to call people out. You have to say, hey, do you realize that you just did this? Because this could be something that she's been doing. Say she's in her 30s. This could be something that she's been doing since she was 3 years old because she saw her mom do it one time. So it's an instinctual thing. She may not even do it knowingly.
Generational.
It's
another piece.
You grew up with seeing it. It's just habit at this point. So maybe just by saying, hey, like, just wanted to let you know that I noticed this, like, whatever. She could be like, oh my God, I didn't even know I was doing that. Best case scenario, didn't know I was doing that. Thank you so much for bringing it to my attention. I'll work on it. You have the total flip side of that where she could be like, well, you know that he is black. Like, what if he tried to do this, 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 and this? And at that point, you're just kind of like, okay, again, I just thought I would bring it to your attention. Like, I was just noticing it. Just wasn't sure if you were aware.
Yeah.
Like, you just kind of go about it as like, I'm bringing it to your attention. Do with this information as you please. But I do think some of it could just be generational and they've learned it and it's passed down. Like, thoughts and ideas and actions and behaviors are passed down. People say all the time, you act like your father, you act like your mother, So I think that could be a part of it. But yeah, it's so hard. I know, especially with social media right now, just even sending somebody an article, like if they post something that's incorrect factually, just being like, hey, just saw that you posted this. Like, just wanted to throw this out here as additional information. That's easier to do, though, because you are behind the screen. Calling people out in real life, that's
hard. No, sometimes you're putting yourself in danger. Like, what are you doing? And you could be putting yourself in physical danger, regardless of which side you stand on. You could be, I hate the terms left and right, so I try to stay away from it. But regardless of your ideals, the other party, the other stance wants to persecute you because you don't believe in what they believe in. I find that it's not something that I don't find very good. I think a collective of ideas is great, but when we're going back to that, you did say something, I want to elaborate on it, is the generational part. So if in fact it could be subconscious, she might not be aware of it. Like the first scenario you said, where you bring it up to her attention and she's like, well, thanks for bringing it to my attention. I'll work on that.
Yeah.
Then you can basically say, so it's like, it's from her subconscious. She's not aware of it. It's just an immediate reaction because when she was 3 years old, she saw her mom do it.
Yeah.
And her mom did it because her grandma did it. Unfortunately, though, the reality of the situations, when you trace it back with history and include years and dates and times, That, I think, is that systematic part. That is a piece of
Agreed.
that systematic part. Is that, and I think from some of the conversations I've had, and I think we're going to have them come on this podcast down the road, is the concept of the police. How can you expect, if it can exist for that woman in the elevator, as you said, right? Can it exist for the policeman?
Absolutely.
Can it be, you're a rookie cop, right? And it's 1970. And I've been on the force for 25 years. Now, I was in the force, Jim Crow's alive and well. And it's my job, it's my duty. I'm doing my job to enforce these very racist structures. And now you're a rookie, but technically, on paper, those structures no longer exist. And now you're a rookie on a force. And I'm the one training you. What's the likelihood that I'm going to train you some really messed up things?
Very high.
No different. And it's going to creep into your subconscious. And then what if you're training the next cop? And then here we are.
Yeah.
And of course, there is, to be quite honest, let's be fair, there's a lot of training holes within the police academy. They are overworked. They should not be responding to mental health issues. They should not be responding to some of the things that they're working on. However, it is also a statistical fact that what they're doing is just it's unjust. It's that piece of paper right there in front of you that's saying, here's your systematic racism.
Yeah.
Anyway, so do you remember any of the other pieces of my question?
No.
Yeah, I kind of forgot to. So we're going to end for now. And you're definitely coming back.
Perfect. I will be back.
Awesome. Kristen, you've been great.